The office was buzzing that morning, like it always did. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, printers hummed in the background. Clara Mitchell, a 32-year-old marketing executive, sat at her desk, her hand absent-mindedly rubbing her swollen belly. She was 9 months pregnant and well aware that her due date was only days away. Still, she had insisted on coming into work. Just a few more reports, she told her colleagues with a smile when they asked why she hadn't taken her maternity leave earlier. The truth was deeper. She couldn't bear sitting at home alone, waiting, counting the hours. Working kept her distracted, and distractions were what she needed most. Because every quiet moment reminded her of him, Ethan Carter. Her ex-husband. The man who had once been her entire world and then, just as swiftly, had walked away. Ethan was a brilliant doctor, an ER physician known for his sharp instincts and calm hands. Their love story had begun in college, bloomed in med school corridors and hospital cafeterias, and culminated in a fairy tale wedding. For years, they had been inseparable. But love, Clara learned, wasn't always enough. His career had consumed him, the hospital taking every ounce of his energy. Nights alone turned into weeks. Missed anniversaries, broken promises, unanswered phone calls. She had supported him, cheered for him, but eventually, the loneliness became unbearable. When the fights grew sharper and the silences longer, she filed for divorce. She had told herself it was the right choice, the only choice. And yet, even now, months later, her heart tightened whenever his name surfaced. And now here she was, pregnant. The father was not Ethan. After their divorce, Clara had tried to move on. For a brief time, she dated a kind man who promised stability, but when he learned about the pregnancy, he vanished, leaving Clara to face motherhood alone. That morning in the office, Clara tried to ignore the cramps tightening across her lower belly. She had felt them for hours, brushing them off as Braxton Hicks, those infamous false contractions everyone talked about. She told herself she had time, that her baby wasn't ready yet. But by late morning, the contractions sharpened. She gasped quietly at her desk, clutching the edge of the table. Her coworker, Jenna, glanced up in alarm. "Clara, are you okay?" Clara forced a smile. "Just a little discomfort. I'll be fine." She wasn't fine. Within minutes, the pain intensified, coming in steady, unrelenting waves. Sweat dotted her forehead, and her hands trembled as she tried to breathe through each surge. Then her water broke. Right there, in the middle of the office. Gasps filled the room. Papers scattered. Someone rushed for towels, another dialed 911. Clara doubled over, clutching her belly, terror coursing through her veins. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She had imagined a calm hospital room, a nurse by her side, soft music playing in the background. Not the fluorescent lights of her workplace, not the startled faces of her coworkers. "Hang on, Clara, an ambulance is on its way." Jenna's voice trembled with panic. Clara barely heard her. The pain was blinding, her body pushing, insisting that the baby was coming now. And then, through the chaos, through the blur of fear, she heard a voice. Deep, steady, achingly familiar. "Clara, look at me. You're going to be okay." Her head snapped up. And there he was. Ethan. Her ex-husband stood in the doorway of the office, his stethoscope slung around his neck, his dark hair slightly disheveled, his eyes locked on hers with fierce determination. For a moment, Clara thought she was hallucinating. What was he doing here? Why now, of all times? But there was no time to question. Another contraction tore through her, and she cried out. Ethan rushed forward, his doctor's training kicking in instantly. "We don't have time to wait for the ambulance. The baby's coming now." He barked orders with the authority of a man who had saved countless lives. "You, boil water if you can. Towels, clean ones. Lay her down flat. Clara, breathe. Just keep breathing." The office transformed into an emergency ward. Colleagues scrambled, obeying his every instruction. And Clara, shaking and terrified, let Ethan guide her. Her heart warred with her mind. This was the man she had left, the man who had broken her with his absence. Yet in this moment, his presence was the only thing keeping her grounded. His voice was steady, his hands sure, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're strong, Clara," he whispered as he knelt beside her. "You can do this." Tears welled in her eyes. Why are you here?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer immediately. He adjusted her position, checked her progress, and then said softly, "Because I couldn't stay away." I still care. The words struck her harder than the contractions. But before she could process them, another wave of pain ripped through her body, forcing her to push. Good, Clara, good. Ethan encouraged. The baby's almost here. Just one more push. You're incredible. Minutes felt like hours. The world around her blurred, coworkers holding their breath, the shrill wail of a phone left unanswered, the pounding of her own heartbeat. And then, suddenly, a sound filled the office that silenced everything else. A cry. A tiny, miraculous cry. Ethan lifted the newborn, his hands gentle, his face awash with awe. It's a girl, he whispered, his voice breaking. He quickly wrapped the baby in a towel, cleaned her, and placed her on Clara's chest. Clara sobbed, clutching the tiny body against her heart. The warmth, the weight, the life, it was overwhelming. She looked up at Ethan through her tears, and for the first time in months, she saw not just the man who had left her, but the man who had once held her through every storm. You did it, he murmured, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. You were amazing. The ambulance arrived moments later, but by then, the miracle had already happened. The paramedics took over, carefully checking Clara and the baby, preparing to transport them to the hospital. But Clara's eyes never left Ethan. As the chaos subsided, a silence settled between them. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, why he was there, what he meant by his words, whether this changed anything between them. At the hospital, after the flurry of tests and paperwork, Clara finally found herself alone with her baby in a quiet recovery room. She traced her daughter's tiny fingers, overwhelmed by love, exhaustion, and confusion. A knock sounded at the door. Ethan stepped in, his expression hesitant. I didn't mean to intrude, he said softly. But I wanted to make sure you were okay. Clara looked up, her emotions swirling. Why were you even at my office today? He shifted uncomfortably. I had a meeting at the clinic next door. When I heard the commotion, I rushed over. I didn't expect to see you. But when I did, everything else disappeared. All I could think about was making sure you and the baby were safe. Tears filled her eyes again. Ethan, I don't know what to say. He stepped closer, his gaze tender. Say you'll let me be part of her life. I know she isn't mine, biologically. But when I held her, Clara, something inside me shifted. I don't want to walk away again. Not from you. Not from her. Her heart twisted. Ethan, you broke me once. I can't go through that again. He knelt beside her, his hand brushing against the baby's tiny hand. I was a fool. I let work consume me. But seeing you today, bringing life into the world with such strength, I remembered why I fell in love with you in the first place. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll try every day. For both of you. Clara's chest tightened with emotion. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that people could change, that love could find its way back. She looked down at her daughter, whose eyes fluttered open for the first time. And in that tiny gaze, Clara found her answer. She reached for Ethan's hand. Okay, she whispered. We'll try. For her. Relief flooded his face, and for the first time in years, Ethan smiled the way he used to, open, genuine, full of hope. That night, as the city outside pulsed with its endless rhythm, Clara lay in the hospital bed, her newborn nestled safely beside her, and Ethan by her side. For the first time since their divorce, she felt whole. Life had brought her chaos, pain, and heartbreak, but it had also brought her this, an unexpected reunion, a fragile but real second chance. Sometimes, she realized, miracles happened not just in the cries of newborns but also in the healing of old wounds. And as her daughter slept peacefully, Clara whispered a silent promise, to embrace this new beginning, wherever it might lead.